It began with a moment of terrible desperation in the remote and unremarkable town of Sidi Bouzid. Driven mad by the corruption and brutality of local officials, a 26-year-old fruit seller doused himself in petrol and set fire to himself. Who would have thought one family's sorrow could be so subversive? Mohamed Bouazizi almost overnight became a symbol of resistance. His defiance inspired others. Suddenly, Tunisia was in revolt. Rattled, the president, Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali, went to his bedside. But it was too late. For all his might, Ben Ali was no match for the symbolic power the dying young man now commanded. 10 days after his funeral, Ben Ali fled the country, the first Arab dictator to be toppled by a popular uprising.
It's unprecedented that a leader gets toppled in that way. People go out in the streets and they topple the president. This wasn't the army. This was the people of Tunisia that had toppled this president, who came out and made 3 speeches, and each one he looked even more scared than the one before, and he just disappeared. In that sense, I think what we saw was elsewhere in the region rumblings of, oh, well, this could happen here as well.
The shock of it convulsed the region. In Algeria, rising food prices had already triggered protests. The Arab world had for years been sitting on a demographic time bomb. Too many young people, too few jobs. Tunisia had shown that protest need not be futile. It emboldened the poor across the region. Especially in Egypt. Protesters were now talking to each other on social networking websites. They harnessed the democratizing power of the internet. On January the 25th, thousands took to the streets. Suddenly, there was a confident new Arab voice crying out for citizenship and human rights. As Hosni Mubarak, in power for 29 years, tried to cling to office, Cairo's Tahrir Square became a place of symbolic resistance. Egyptians had crossed a vital threshold. They broke through the fear barrier, defying the state brutality that had until now cowed them.
We don't afraid from anybody here in Egypt. We are Egyptian people here. We will say our word.
Pro-government gangs also marched on the square. For a couple of days, there were violent clashes. This was an opportunity for the army to intervene, using the violence as a pretext to clear the streets. Crucially, they did not. Instead, military chiefs said they would not use force. The people, they said, had a legitimate right to be heard. By early February, only one thing would satisfy the protesters: the removal of Mubarak himself. Only days earlier, it had seemed an impossible dream. On February the 11th, it happened. Mubarak went.
I just hope it's a civil state. It becomes a civil state and the army takes this to democracy. Egypt is a free country. We will never be beaten by anyone.
But when the security forces feel that they've lost legitimacy and are losing status with the people, then the ruler realizes that the skids are under him. And the change in Egypt came because the security chiefs said to Mubarak, you're in a cul-de-sac, you can't survive. Maybe we haven't told you the truth up to now, but you've now got to go.
The security forces would also play a crucial role in the tiny island kingdom of Bahrain. Here, inspired by the Egyptians, protesters made Pearl Square their own symbolic place of resistance. Riot police moved against them as they slept. 3 died and hundreds were wounded. But Bahrainis too had breached the fear barrier. The protests went on despite the guns. The government quickly backed down. On Saturday the 19th, the army and police quietly withdrew. The protesters took back the square to demand an end to the autocratic rule of the royal family.
We are living here and we will die here also. Whatever, we are not afraid and will not care. Down, down, Hamed! Down, down, Hamed! Down, down!
In Libya, protests began in mid-February and descended quickly into chaos and brutality. Security forces, many of them foreign mercenaries loyal to Colonel Gaddafi, did not hesitate to use force. Hundreds are said to have been killed. But many others deserted. The state is fragmenting. The east of the country is under the control of anti-Gaddafi rebels. Gaddafi himself made a bizarre television appearance to say he was ready to fight to the last bullet. It looked like a desperate last stand. His son, Saif al-Islam, said the rebels would plunge the country into civil war.
Forget oil, forget gas, forget these resources. Get ready for chaos.
The Arab world is diverse, and each Arab autocracy is autocratic in its own distinctive way. But there are unifying themes. In Egypt, President Mubarak used to argue that the only alternative to him was the anti-Western religious fundamentalism of the Muslim Brotherhood. In Bahrain, the royal family used to argue that the only alternative to them was bitter sectarian conflict between the country's Sunni and Shia communities. And in Libya, Saif al-Islam argued that without the unifying leadership of his father, the country would descend into civil war between its clans. But in taking to the streets in the name of civic citizens' democracies and social justice, the protesters have given the lie to each of these narratives and made us rethink deeply entrenched assumptions about the Arab world and about the kind of change that might now be possible there. The Arab world is in transition. We know what it is in transition from, but not yet what it's in transition to. But the relationship between Arab leaders and the people they rule over is fundamentally changed.
The Tunisians who demonstrated were inspired by the death of the self-immolation of one man. They suddenly realized that he had the courage. Why shouldn't they have the courage? And then people in other countries, the Tunisians in other countries said, the Tunisians have done this. Why can't we have the courage? And that was Egypt. And then the Libyans felt, we don't have to put up with this any longer. The Yemenis are feeling that. The Syrians are probably feeling that. Some Jordanians may be feeling that, or that's a different sort of country. The Iranians have already felt that in the 2009 Green Revolution.
Who would have thought that Mohammed Bouazizi's desperate self-immolation could effect so seismic a shift? In Sidi Bouzid, where the young fruit seller is buried, they have renamed the main street, Boulevard Mohammed Bouazizi.